So Monica, we've been talking about tips on how people can come together and bridge divides, and you're talking about a shift from asking why questions, which might put people on the defensive, to how questions, which might help dig up some commonalities and common values.
Yep.
And I think that's great, and I want to do it. But I wonder what you think about the fact that, the kind of uncomfortable fact that fighting is fun, and it's kind of addictive to want to feel angry, right?
Totally.
So like all those things are great for people maybe, you know, realize like we need to make a difference. But what about the situation where, you know, the uncomfortable fact that like it's kind of, you know, it's kind of addictive to get in this battle, right?
Oh, it totally is. Well, a couple things on that. One is, I think of the analogy of base camps up a mountain. You know, in a lot of big mountains, we set up base camps because you need to have kind of a hub, a place where you could rest, you know, in order to gain your strength, wake up early next morning, keep climbing that mountain.
Sure.
So the more difficult the divide you have to cross, you know, the bigger the difference. But also, critically, the less trust there is in the relationship, the higher the need for those base camps. So, debate, like really good spirited debate where you really go like, that's wrong, you know, what about this? Those can be awesome if there's enough trust underneath. And if there's been enough kind of, if there's been enough of an attempt at understanding that people kind of know, this person still values me and what I think. You know, we're playing here. We're gonna test each other.
Yeah.
That can be really fun.
Like sports.
Right. The issue is that we do it without the base camp. And we fall. We trip and we fall and we lose our balance. And we can hurt relationships that way too. In really difficult divides. So that's the thing, is like, can we have a little bit of restraint on going to the win-lose mode, that bantery, wonderful, fun place, when there is that big gap in trust, and instead kind of understand that that can only be productive when there's enough trust. Only. So, you know, sometimes there's debates, like really formal debates at colleges and stuff. There's a structure there that holds people up, right? But without structure, you know, you have to build that yourself, and the way you do it is by building trust, and the way you build trust is by actually listening curiously before you start judging. You have to do enough listening where the other person's like, oh yeah, they get it. They get where I'm coming from. And then it becomes possible and possibly very fun and productive to go like, okay, but let me push back on that. Let me do this, let me do that, right? Is if you're going for understanding first and you've built a base camp, then go ahead, like test the ideas.
Yeah. So I love that idea of listening and not necessarily reacting, just, you know, kind of letting the conversation go on its own and not, you know, jumping right into a fight. To me, that sounds a lot like meditation or mindfulness practices, where you're listening to your own thoughts and feeling your sensations and being kind of non-attached to them. Has that come up in your research, like the connection of mindfulness to bridging divides?
It has, and at first I sort of resisted it. I was like, no, this can't really be about this. But it's like, some of that stuff around awareness and meditation's been around for thousands of years for a reason. You know, and different cultures have discovered it, you know, different times in different ways for a reason. Awareness is really the first step. There's a lot of things that we don't even notice about how our mind reacts to ideas. Psychology is really like spelling it out, you know, with data, which is great. But we've actually always known that when we encounter ideas that we don't like intuitively, our brains will behave differently. And they will close the door before we're even allowing ourselves to consider what we're hearing or the person who's saying it.
Love that. Yeah. Just listening to these birds around here.
Speaking of awareness, right? Being in the moment.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I'm wondering if there's, I love your stories, you know, wondering if you could share another one of a person or two people who surprised you, you know, in their bridging divides.
Yeah, let's see. Well, just on this book tour, I met a woman in California who told me that she had had a couple of I never thought of it that way moments through discussions about abortion. So my book is titled I Never Thought of It That Way because of the magic of noticing when you think or say, I never thought of it that way, in some conversation or even as you're reading an article. When you think that thought, it means that some idea has landed with you in a new way. And maybe it turns what used to be a flat concept for you, it adds a third dimension. Maybe you now have a polygon and you're looking at a different facet. And that's beautiful. It's a wonderful, magical thing. So this woman is very liberal, and her daughter had befriended a very conservative younger man. And so after enough trust had been built, you know, she herself is a very curious person, and she describes herself that way, she was able to talk to him about abortion because they had very different perspectives. And at the end of what was a pretty interesting conversation, she realized first that he had an I never thought of it that way moment. That he told her, you know, they talked about all this, and there was a moment where she told him, you know, my daughter, who's your good friend, she wouldn't have been possible if it weren't for the 2 abortions that I had. You know, so she came when I was ready, and she is who she is because I was ready to be her mother in the way I wanted to be. And he was like, I never thought of it that way. It really, it affected him. And then later, she had her own I never thought of it that way moment where she was processing the conversation, and she realized this really counterintuitive thing. She realized after talking to this boy that she wanted her daughter in some ways to end up with someone like him. Because at least when a girl gets pregnant, if he were to get a girl pregnant, he would want to take responsibility. Because for him, life is really important. And so she as a mother is afraid that if that happened to her daughter, the man might just not care. And she's like, well, at least he would really care. And isn't that beautiful? So she saw something beautiful at a point of view that she had initially thought didn't have much value.
Both sides actually do care about life and, and
shared
happiness
values.
and the basics.
And the freedom of women and other people.
Yeah. So I know you've been doing a lot of interviews and talks in your book tour, and I just wonder if there's anything that you haven't gotten to share yet that, you know, hasn't come up that you want to.
I mean, there's a lot.
We have 3 minutes. So
we have
just
3 minutes. You know, I guess I would. Where do I go? I guess I would encourage people to. This all feels very hard, you know, and it's become kind of a refrain. This is very hard. This is very hard. Now, here's what I believe. Take it or leave it. I believe that it can be very, very hard psychologically, depending on who you are, you know, how much your beliefs feel tied to your identity, the kind of threat level that you feel from other ideas, and then the degree to which you tie those ideas to the people, and the idea and the person feels like the same. Then yes, psychologically this can be very difficult. But at all levels of difficulty, you can take even small steps. So you're not ready to have a conversation with someone across the divide? That's fine. You can have a more curious conversation with yourself. Next time you encounter an article that seems thoughtful, but you really disagree with, read it, asking yourself the question, what is the strongest argument on the other side? Or what is the deep down honest concern that someone is looking to express here that I can identify? You do that and you begin to crack open your mind even then, just on your own. And then if you are ready to have a conversation, make sure that you have a couple things going for you. You have time, you have attention, you actually know that the other person's paying attention. If you're just texting with them, they might be on the toilet. You don't know where their attention is. Be sure that the conversation is contained to the people actually having it. We make this mistake all the time. We go on social media where the temptation is to perform perspectives because we have this invisible mass audience and we don't know how big it is and we don't know how they're judging us, so we have no idea. And so again, we're not really being honest, we're being performative. So if you can have containment, time, attention, parity, which is just making sure you're on the level with the other person, they can't hide or block your comment, you know, you're actually together. Then conversation can do incredible work. It really can, and you have to be comfortable with the messiness of it. But even heat, anger, and those things is okay as long as you can cook with it, and it's not burning something.
That's great.
Heat can cook. Heat can be part of the content
Yeah.
of your learning.
Yeah. Cook up a very flavorful
Yeah.
stew.
Surprising stew.
Yeah, it takes time
Yeah.
and parsley.
Yes.
So thanks so much for your time today.
Totally. This
It was
fun.
a great conversation.
This
I
was
appreciate
great.
it.
All right.
All right.
See you later.
Take care.